guys, I'm Sherry Ann Richardson, and I'm the author of several books, including The Complete Idiot's Guide to Year-Round Gardening and The Complete Idiot's Guide to Seed Saving and Starting. You can also find me online on a number of websites, including exoticgardening.com and experimentalhomesteader.com. So today we are going to talk about year-round gardening. And we're going to talk about how to garden outdoors year-round, even in a cold climate, using protective covers or garden structures. We're going to talk about how to protect your cold weather crops and heat-loving crops depending on the season. So you can use these techniques summer or winter. And we're also going to talk about how to keep overwintered plants producing fresh food all winter long, even in a cold climate. So a lot of times people go wrong because they don't get their plants started early enough in the season so that they are mature if they are trying to grow in the fall or early spring into, the cold months. Or they try to grow cool crops like lettuce in the summer when those tend to bolt if you're not doing something to protect them and help to keep them cool. So this is kind of a problem. And another thing that people tend to do is overcomplicate it. While you do need row cover, and I suggest 6 mil plastic if you're not using anything else, a lot of people feel like, oh, it's so cold, I have to put heat and have a heated greenhouse, or there's just no way that row cover and plastic are going to protect my plants. And they just tend to overthink it. As long as you're choosing the right plants and you're giving adequate protection, those plants are going to be just fine, even in the cold winter, even when it's freezing outside and there's snow on the ground. So, first of all, a cold frame or a protective garden structure can be made out of anything. You can use bales of straw and an old window. If you don't have an old window, you could use 6 mil plastic and secure it to those bales of straw, or better yet, to the ground. Because the key is to keep the heat inside of your structure and not let it escape, which is why it's so important to have your structure properly secured to the ground, so the wind or wild animals, or even domesticated animals for that part, can't move that plastic and get it up and allow the cold air to go inside, because that is the fastest way to lose your crops, is to not keep that warm air in and let the cold outside air come in. You can go fancy. You can build a cold frame. You could buy a tunnel house. You can even buy small cold frames if that's what you want to do. But like I said, it does not have to be a fancy structure. We have used 1x2s and 6 mil plastic with the frost cover inside, and it has worked just fine. It hasn't looked pretty, but it's worked, and that's the key here. Now, during the winter time, when you need to protect your cool crops, you're trying to keep all of that heat in. If you want to put a little bit of mulch over the roots or compost, that's a really good idea, because you want to protect those roots and try to keep them warm, as well as the foliage of the plants. And what you don't want to do is allow the plastic or the frost cover to touch any parts of those plants, because those things are going to get cold, and there's nothing you can do about that. That is okay for the plastic or the frost cover to get cold. You just don't want that touching your plants, because if it's touching your plants, it's going to transfer that cold into the plant's foliage, and it's going to kill off that plant. So that's why this is so important. During the summer, you don't have to be careful about the materials touching the plants necessarily, although I do suggest that you elevate the materials so they don't touch your plants. But if they touch your plants during the summer, it's not such a big deal, except maybe the plastic. The plastic could transfer the sun and cause the plant to overheat. So you do have to be really careful. And ideally, you wouldn't even be using plastic during the summer unless you're growing in a tunnel house or inside of, some kind of garden structure. And then you really, really need to have some kind of airflow, because those structures can get over 100 degrees in the summertime, and that's going to cook your plants. So how do you keep these plants cool, whether you're growing in the garden or in a garden structure? One thing you can do is to provide some type of shade. You could grow your cool weather crops like your lettuce, your spinach, those kind of things under a shade tree. You could create a raised bed or use a container and put them under a shade tree so they have shade during the hottest part of the day. Now, you want to make sure that they do get some sun and not just, dark shade, because they won't grow right if they're in dark shade. So something that is movable, or something that, say, gets morning sun, afternoon shade, that would be an ideal location for those cool weather crops during the summer. You also want to use compost or some kind of mulch, again, to mulch the roots. 3 inches, keep it away from the stems, but 3 inches of compost or mulch, that's going to really help to keep that soil underneath cool and moist. You want to make sure the plants get adequate water. You don't want the plants swimming in water, but you want that soil to stay moist, because that soil moisture is going to keep the temperature down around the roots. And that's why this is so, so important. Some people will use shade cloth and create a structure up above, or some kind of trellising to throw shade down onto those cool weather crops so that they can grow them all summer long. Again, depending on your climate, you need to try these different techniques and see what works. You can use frost cover during the summer if you want. I do suggest venting it, at least. I mean, it is sort of a see-through flowing type of material that really should not hold the heat in, but you're going to want some pollinators in there depending on what you're growing. Even if you're growing tomatoes, which we know can self-pollinate, you're still going to want to let some pollinators in from time to time. But one of the things that the frost cover, or row cover as it's called, can do in the summer for you, if you're having problems with bean beetles or other kind of pests that are Japanese beetles, anything that's eating your plants, this is going to put a barrier between your plant and them. And so when they land, they're just going to land on that cover, and they're not going to be able to get inside to your plants under most circumstances. I mean, the material could tear, an animal could come along and create an opening, but under most circumstances, if you have that material secured to the ground and good and tight, you're going to be good to go, and those pests are not going to be able to bother your plants, which is a great method of organic pest control. But remember, at some point, if your plants need pollinated, you're going to have to open that up and allow the pollination, and then you could recover it if you wanted to. Okay. So, how to keep overwintered plants producing fresh food all winter long? Because that's our goal, right? To grow as much of our own food as we can. This is really simple. I have a tunnel house now, but you can use a cold frame to do this. You just need to make sure that whatever structure you use is tall enough to allow you, and big enough to allow you to put that frost cover inside on some kind of trellising. I have the fancy hoops now that you can get. You can buy them online. They're just metal hoops that are real flexible and bendable. I have used plastic conduit in the past to create the hoops with. You can use anything that you have. Tomato cages, those are great if you're growing lower crops like lettuce or chard. You just want to be able to put that frost or row cover over your plants and make sure it's not touching it. And then you need at least 1 layer of 6 mil plastic. On top of that, give yourself an inch or two. Make sure that plastic is an inch or two away from that frost cover, because you don't want it touching, and you want that airspace because that's where your heat is going to gather. And that's what's going to keep the plants inside alive, is that heat. Now, you don't want to open your structure in the morning on cold days, because your plants are going to be frozen. They're going to look like they're dead, and you're going to let all that cold air in. So this is another technique that you have to think about is, you know, are you going to have time between, say, 1 o'clock in the afternoon and 3 o'clock in the afternoon to go out to open up that structure, to harvest your plants, and to get it covered up very quickly before that cold air gets in? This is why a walk-in structure, if you can get one, is really nice. But again, if you can't, a cold frame will do the job. You've just got to be really quick about it. So here are the specific action steps to get your year-round garden going. And you can start right now this spring using these action steps to get a head start on your spring and summer garden. And then you can use them again in the fall to extend that garden into the winter and early spring season. So first of all, you need to choose a plant protection method. Are you going to go with a cold frame? Are you going to go with a tunnel house? Are you going to use an unheated greenhouse? Because a tunnel house and an unheated greenhouse are a little bit different type of structures. Are you going to build something? Whatever type of structure you're going to use, that's the first thing you need to do, is choose what type of structure you're going to have. You're going to need some 6 mil plastic, and you're going to need some frost or row cover. You can buy that online. And you're going to need to make sure that you have enough of those materials to cover the structure that you're planning. Because if you have to piece plastic together, which you really don't want to do, but sometimes you may have to, you're going to want to take the clear packing tape and you're going to want to tape it on both sides so that it's not just 2 pieces flopping in the wind like this, because it will tear. If the plastic can flop and the wind can get up underneath of it, it will tear. This is why if you take your plastic and you take a stick or something and you put your plastic and you want to roll it under and then secure it to the ground. If you don't have enough to roll under, just make sure that the edges of that plastic are held down really tight, whether you use bales of straw, pieces of wood, brick, rock, whatever you use. Make sure the wind can't get up underneath and grab that plastic, because if it can, it will tear it. So you need to choose the best seeds for the location and the season. For example, there are types of lettuce and carrots and different types of vegetables that are bred for cool season growing. They're going to do a lot better in the winter months, the fall, the early spring. They're going to do better during those months than something that, say, is bred for the heat of summer. That's not to say that crops that are bred for the heat of summer won't survive through the winter. And that's not to say that you have to go out and buy specific seeds for fall or winter gardening. But that's to say, if you want to have the best success, go ahead and buy those specialty seeds that are created for those cooler temperatures. You're going to be glad you did. You want to start seeds at the right time. And I suggest starting those seeds indoors if you're planning for early spring. If you're planning for fall, go ahead and start those outdoors, because you'd be starting those in July. But for early spring or late winter, you want to start those indoors and then harden those off. The reason for this is the heat is going to allow those crops to grow a little faster and a little bigger. And what you want for fall, winter, or early spring is mature sized plants that you are planting. You don't have to plant them as mature sized plants, but they need to be mature size by the time that you're covering them up and getting them ready for that growing season. The reason for this is those plants are not really going to grow during the cold. They're going to sit there in kind of a dormant state, waiting for you to harvest them. So if they're not a mature size, then they are going to sit there in an immature size, and once the temperature warms, then they're going to start growing and they're going to tend to bolt. So size matters. You want to cover your plants quickly anytime that you have to uncover them. And again, harvest in the afternoon on cold days. These are all really, really important techniques. I know that some crops such as kale, Jerusalem artichokes, Brussels sprouts taste a little bit better after they've had frost hit them. So if you want to allow a light frost to hit some of those type of crops that do better, taste better after frost hits them, you could allow 1 or 2 light frosts to hit those crops and then go ahead and use your plant protection methods and cover them over for the winter. That way they're going to last a little bit longer than they would in the open garden. And you're going to be able to harvest them a little bit longer. And let's face it, harvesting fresh produce in the middle of winter is a great way to save money at the store, have more nutrients in your food, and get more out of your garden than you would if you just allow it to go dormant for the winter. So now I want to tell you about the program that you can sign up for free. It's called Getting Started with Organic Gardening, and I'm offering it as a free program to those of you that are watching this. In this e-course, you will learn how to build healthy organic soil, including how to compost the right way. There are lots of printables that you guys can print out and put wherever you need on your refrigerator or in your gardening notebook so that you have those. You're going to learn how to simplify garden maintenance because let's face it, none of us really like spending all of our time weeding when we're out in the garden. You're also going to learn some natural methods of pest control because pests can be a problem and they will destroy your entire garden if allowed to do so. You're going to learn when to plant seeds, when to transplant established plants, and when should you direct sow seeds into the garden. Now, I have direct sown seeds as early as January 1st here in my Indiana garden. I did use protection to keep the critters away and to give those seeds a little bit of warmth, and they did germinate when the time was right. I did use cold weather crops like peas and carrots, onions, things like that the cold really wouldn't bother. So again, you need to know your seeds and the temperatures that they can tolerate in order to be able to direct sow during the colder months of the year. And you're also going to get my 101 Organic Tips ebook for free when you sign up for this course. Now you will be added to my email list. So do expect to receive some emails, and you will be added to the exotic gardening email list as well. So it will be the shop email list so that you can see any specials or any products that I have going on, and also my exotic gardening email list, so you will get things off of my gardening blog, and hopefully you will enjoy that. So I hope you will sign up for that Getting Started with Organic Gardening e-course that I am offering for free. I hope you have enjoyed this little tutorial, and I look forward to interacting with all of you. Have a fantastic day, and thanks so much for watching.